Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Weekly Walk. I'm your host, Joshua Ingram. It is Monday, August 8th, year of our Lord 2022, and this is episode 69. I wanted to start out talking about something we were talking about at my Saturday fellowship group, and it was just an interesting thing, kind of an obvious revelation to me that most people are probably like, duh, how do you not know that? But sometimes we just have blind spots, and we need other people to open our eyes to something that's very, very obvious. But it started out, I had this thought, and I've thought it before, and it's kind of a scary thought, but it's like, when you think about the afterlife, like as Christians, we are supposed to be excited to dwell in eternal glory because we will be with Jesus Christ. Like, you get to be with God. You get to be in the presence of God. And then, secondarily, you get all the benefits of that. No pain, no suffering, eternal joy and happiness and pleasure and just all those things that go along with it. But your main objective is supposed to be fellowship with God. And so, like, when I'm examining my heart and testing myself, it'll often grieve me when I think about the afterlife. Because in this particular case, I was thinking about, what if at death I was just annihilated? Like, no more consciousness, no more thought, just done. Would I be okay with that? And my initial thought is yes, because it's like, I know that God is just, and I know that I deserve hell, and I know that my sins are reprehensible and disgusting and repulsive and deserve punishment. And so if Jesus Christ saves me from that, and I don't have to experience the justice of God, because Christ bore that for me. He paid that penalty for me. He saved me from that. And I don't have to go to eternal hell, eternal flames. That's all I need. Like, I'm happy with that. Like, that's mercy to me. I guess that's the difference between mercy and grace, right? Grace is the benefits of eternal life that we don't deserve. Mercy is forgiveness and not getting what we do deserve. Grace is getting how would I phrase that? Mercy is I guess it's a hard thing for me to explain. I guess mercy is knowing you deserve hell and not getting it. That's mercy. Grace is not only getting forgiven, but getting all sorts of benefits and gifts on top of it. It's like, somebody explained it to me one time. If somebody crashed into your motorcycle, and they were at fault and they destroyed your motorcycle, and you said, hey, don't worry about it, and you forgave them. That's mercy. Grace would be, hey, don't worry about it, you're forgiven. By the way, let me buy you a new vehicle. Like, that's grace. And so, like, I guess I'm thinking, I'm content with the mercy. I don't need the grace. And so then I started thinking, well, that shows a lack of something. And it just led me to think about, like, why don't I have an excitement for the good things that we're to receive? Why am I just grateful that I'm getting the mercy? Why am I not excited about all the gifts? Like, if any of that makes sense. And so, like, it turned, in our conversation at Bible study, it turned to why don't I, because to me, like, I look at life, like, I see people who I've always just thought about from like a psychological standpoint or an emotional standpoint or whatever. I guess people with high emotional IQs or extroverted people who seem to experience emotions a lot more severe than I do. They feel the emotions a lot on a grander scale than I do, including like depression and all the negativity. I often see people fall into these deep dark holes that I don't. And then also on the counter end of that, the opposite end of the spectrum is I see people that get super excited and just rejoice over things that I also don't get. I've often described it as even keeled. I'm very, my emotional levels are plateaued. Like when I experience sorrow or depression, it's very minor compared to what I see in other people. It's very dulled. And on the other end, it's the same with excitement. Like I just don't fluctuate very much. I stay on a level playing field, whereas I see other people with just high peaks and low valleys. And so I thought these people that experience these great joys, these great highs, like they're the ones that are seem to be looking forward to the gifts because they get so much out of it. To me, like I look at it like I'm pretty blah. I started thinking, like I asked the brothers, like what is the greatest joy you've ever experienced, you know? Like what is the highest high you've had? Because I don't think I've had it. You know, most of my life is pretty just blah. It's morose is I think the word I used, or just melancholy. You know, I'm just, it's like even the greatest things that I've experienced, I could take or leave. You know, it's like it ain't that great. You know, I don't have to have it. You know, I don't. There's I don't think there's, and at the same time the lowest low, like nothing's ever happened where I've just been so devastated that it takes me forever to recover. Like my lows aren't that low and my highs aren't that high. And so I always feel like I'm missing out on something. I'm missing out on these great moments of rejoicing that other people have. And perhaps that's why I don't look forward to the eternal glories as much as I do the forgiveness. And so if that makes sense. And so I was thinking, why am I not excited and rejoicing in things? Why do I not get those high plateau or those high peaks? Why am I so just plateaued and nonchalant about things? And what we came up with is that we think that the key to rejoicing, the key to these high highs is gratefulness. It's thankfulness. Like, because I am a very critical person and I complain a lot more than I do rejoice, or I complain a lot more than I give thanks. And this is a great default in my character. It's a great error within my heart. And I think it really does dull the senses when you're not grateful. And we were talking about how if you're thankful and grateful about things, then you're rejoicing more. Like I was thinking, like one person can bite into a delicious, juicy plum, and they're like, "Oh, this is so great! This is so delicious! This is amazing!" And then I can bite into that same plum, and I can be like, you know, it's just a plum, you know, and like I that's how I experience everything. And so I started thinking, man, it's a lack of gratefulness. Because as the brothers were talking and discussing this, I focused on just something real simple. I don't know why I always come back to this, but when I think about thankfulness, I always start with the most simplistic thing I can think of, and it's like a nice, warm, cozy new sock. You know, it feels good on the foot. It's nice and comfortable. It feels right. And so like whenever I do try to give thanks, I try to start with small things like that and then work my way up. And as the brothers were talking, I was thinking about that. I was like, you know, I was thinking about the sock that was on my foot and how nice it felt and how comfortable it was. And as I started thinking about that, I started to taste a little bit of excitement. I started to rejoice a little bit. And so that kind of like that truth that was being talked about, how thankfulness and gratefulness unlocks rejoicing. I started to see the truth of that. And I started thinking, man, if I could just wake up and be thankful for things, that really unlocks the rejoicing. Instead of just taking things for granted and being so complacent and nonchalant and instead of always thinking about the negatives, waking up and thinking, oh man, my shoulder hurts, and oh man, I got to go put in an 8-hour day of work, and oh man, I got nothing to do afterwards, or whatever the normal complaints that a person has. Instead of thinking about that, waking up and thinking, praise God, I've got an apartment here, I've got a place to live, I've got a cupboard full of food, and thank God I've got nice clothes that I can put on, and praise the Lord, I've got a job that I can pay my bills with, and all these things that if instead of focusing on the negative, I was to just be thankful and grateful, it would unlock the rejoicing. And so as we rejoice in these things, that in turn unlocks a desire for the eternal glories. Because as we're rejoicing in these earthly small glories that we have, we recognize that it's just a foretaste. It's just a small little sample of what is to come. It's a little taste, a sliver of what's available to us in heaven. And if we're excited and rejoicing and grateful about small things, then we have so much more to look forward to. And so it's really just about perspective. And I desire that. I want that so bad. I've talked about it on numerous podcasts that I'm just, my outlook on life is just so like, I don't even know how to describe it. Melancholy, I guess, is the best way to describe it. It's just so, life to me is just a series of boredoms. It's just, nothing too bad, nothing too great. It's just like, here I am, And because I look at things like that, I don't have much excitement in my life. I don't have much rejoicing, and therefore I'm robbing myself of those pleasures that are supposed to awaken a desire for greater pleasures in glory. And I want to have that. I want to be a man that is thankful and grateful and full of rejoicing. And I think when you are that way, then you're not satisfied with annihilation. You're not satisfied with just being forgiven. It awakens a thirst and a hunger in you for greater pleasures and more glories. And so you start to crave and desire those greatest of glories. And so it all just kind of ties together, I think. And I think the key is the gratefulness and thankfulness. And I hope to really develop that in my heart and develop that in my life, so that I can just be a more joyous person, a more, I guess, for lack of a better word, a happier person. But anyways, just something we were talking about, and I thought I'd share my thoughts here on the podcast. Alright, so I want to talk about something that may not seem spiritual at first, but at the end I'll explain why it is a spiritual matter. It's more of a media, political type matter. So Alex Jones, who's the host of InfoWars, a show that I've listened to quite frequently, especially back in 15 years ago or so. I watched a lot of Alex Jones documentaries, specifically about 9/11 and whatnot. Really opened my eyes. Really well produced documentaries. A lot of just thorough investigation and factual information. Just a well done documentary. And then years later, I started listening to his radio show, and there's a few things, like a person who just goes and listens to the Alex Jones radio show or the Alex Jones podcast is going to first discover, man, this guy is super aggressive, seems really angry. And the way he just dumps information on people, like it's stuff they should already know, can seem far out, extreme and crazy. Like if you were to listen to some of the stuff without knowing the building blocks, without knowing the foundational worldview, and you just hear these things, you'd be like, dude, what is this guy talking about? This is insane. But because he talks like he expects you to know what he's talking about. So if you've done years and years and years of research on New World Order, government corruption and whatnot, then you're certainly going to understand what he's talking about, and you'll appreciate it. But the aggression that he brings, the anger he brings, and I get it, because if you spend any amount of time looking into the darkness, you see what appears to be injustice. It seems so unfair that these people are getting away with this stuff, and it's so evil, so wicked. Child molestation, murder, corruption on the highest scale, and an evil agenda, a desire to control people, to determine what you can and can't do, to determine your freedoms. Like when you look into that, it just makes you very, very upset. The scriptures say that because evil abounds, the love of many grows cold. And I started to experience that as I was listening to this news every day through Alex Jones. I would get so angry that the love started to grow cold. I would be like, I wanted justice. I wanted to see these people punished. I wanted to see these people executed for treason. You forget grace and mercy because it's so disgustingly evil and so in your face. There's a psalm that talks about it too, where the psalmist talks about how he was grieved by the prosperity of the wicked. And he was very grieved and upset at, basically like, why, God? Why are you allowing this? This doesn't make sense. And then it says, until he came to his senses, he went to the house of God, and then he remembered, oh yeah, God will have his day of vengeance. These people have been set in a slippery place. There will be an ultimate calamity. And so justice is coming. We may not see it this side of the grave, but justice is coming. But when you're looking at their actions every day, you get angry. So I understand Alex Jones's anger. For 30, 40 years, however long he's been doing this, at least since Waco, Texas, what was that, 94, 95? And probably even before that, but he's been investigating this stuff. So he's seeing the darkest of the dark every single day and spending countless hours. His radio show's 4 hours a day, so he's spending at least 4 hours a day talking about it. It's consumed his life. It's what it is. So, and I don't know if he's born again or not. The fruit appears very bitter coming from his life, but I'm not his judge. I hope he's born again, but if you're looking into that evil without the grace of God to pull you back to your senses, like the psalmist, and make you realize, oh yeah, God will get him in the end, you would just become consumed with vengeance and anger. So I get that. But if you're just going into his show blindly, you're not going to get that, and you're going to be like, this dude's out of his mind. But he's really not. When you know what he's talking about, he's not. He has so much information in his head from his research, and he's so passionate and so angry about the wickedness that this information just comes out super aggressive, super fast, super in your face. So when I recommend Alex Jones to people, I would say go watch his documentaries, because those are more thought out. They're calm. They're done in a logical order. You're going to learn things. without the aggressive information download, just a dump of information on you. It's gonna be piecemeal, and so that's a lot easier to understand, or you can acclimate to it a little bit better. But anyways, with all that said, the reason I'm talking about it is, so Alex Jones was sued by the victims of the Sandy Hook shooting, and I want to talk about why that's dangerous. Like, you are supposed to have freedom of speech in this country. You're supposed to have freedom of press. And with that freedom comes, the freedom implies that you have the right to believe whatever you want to believe. And you have the right to say whatever you want to say, as long as you're not threatening or injuring somebody. You know, if you're not threatening violence to somebody, if you're just disagreeing with mainstream media, if you have a difference of opinion, you're allowed to believe in a flat earth. You're allowed to believe that the Sandy Hook shooting was a fake. You're allowed to believe that the moon is made out of cheese, or that Bigfoot lives in Washington State, or that Joe Biden's a clone, or Michelle Obama's a man, or whatever. You have the right to believe whatever you want to believe. And you also have the right to say whatever you want to say. If you're reporting something, if you're disagreeing, excuse me, if you want to believe that Michelle Obama's a man, and you feel it necessary to tell people, you have that right to present your evidence. You have the right to come forward and to say, here's why I think this, X, Y, and Z. And then people are supposed to be able to, open-minded people should be able to hear out every side, regardless of how ridiculous it is. Say, okay, you believe the moon landing was fake. Okay, what's your evidence? And then if you're open-minded, if you're teachable, which the scriptures command us to be, you're going to hear out their facts. You're going to see if it makes sense. Is it logical? You're going to see, okay, does this person have motive to lie to me or to believe this, or is this, or what they're purporting, is there motive to the lie? Can you see why the lie would be told? Can you understand? That's each individual is supposed to be able to determine for themselves what's true. And then once you hear everything, you're able to either dismiss it or accept it. And if you dismiss it, that doesn't mean, here's the thing, you're not allowed to censor people's speech. You can disagree with them, you can hear them out, you can say, nah, I don't agree with that, but you can't tell them they can't say it. That's not freedom. Freedom is you go on saying whatever you want to say, you believe whatever you want to believe. That's freedom of press, freedom of speech. It's constitutional. That's what this country was founded on. It's absolutely necessary to free thought. The moment you start censoring certain speech and saying only this type of speech, now you've moved into an authoritarian system where some power gets to decide what you hear and so you're no longer allowed free thought. You're told what to think. You're told what to believe. That's Orwellian. That's what the book 1984 was all about. That's antithetical to freedom. It's not supposed to be that way. You're not supposed to be dictated to on what you believe and what you don't believe. People are allowed to believe and report any craziness they want. And then you as a free individual are able to hear it, listen to it, and judge for yourself whether or not it's true. And if you don't believe it, you don't agree with it, you don't want to hear it, you can dismiss it, you can ignore it, you can move on, you can disassociate yourself from that person for the rest of your life. You don't have to hear their theory anymore, you don't have to listen to them, but you can't silence them. That's authoritarianism, that's not freedom. And so when the government steps in and says, hey, we're censoring by suing, we're going to sue this guy and they're going to say, oh, it was defamation. Like my brother pointed that out to me. Well, you're not allowed to do defamation. Well, defamation's about individuals. As far as I understand it, defamation is saying I can't lie or slander or, what's the word, disrepute? Like to come against your reputation, to slander you, to tell lies against you that are going to do injury to you in business or society or whatever. I'm not allowed to just go around and call you a child molester and ruin your life with that. Go and tell your boss and your spouse and like that. But defamation is about individuals, not events, not news stories. You can't defame an event. You can't slander a news story. That, like, you're supposed to be able to question the narrative. You're supposed to be able to say, hey, I don't believe this is true. I don't, and here's why. And again, it doesn't matter how crazy it is. You're allowed to do that, and then you're allowed to present why you believe that. The moment that the government starts censoring stuff like that, and it started to happen, it got scary back when social media started to do that, because social media is supposed to be a free speech platform. It's supposed to be a public square where people are allowed to say whatever they want. So when that started to get censored, even though that's a business, I mean, you sign a contract with a company, there's a gray area there where they can kind of say, well, you can't say this because you have the option of not using that anymore. It's not really infringing upon your freedom. It might make your life a little uncomfortable because, again, that has become the public square. So that is how people communicate now. But because it's a business, there's a little gray area there. But in media, freedom of press, excuse me, is so foundational. Like, our forefathers understood that. They understood you have to have freedom of religion. You have to have freedom of press. You have to have freedom of speech, because that allows freedom of thought. That allows free individuals. If you take this away, we're going to be enslaved. They knew, okay, this is why there is tyranny in Europe, and this is what we have to protect our citizens from. If this is infringed upon, we are going to be under tyranny. And so the fact that they sue Alex Jones and say, hey, you can't say this. And again, I spent probably thousands of hours listening to the Alex Jones show, and I never heard him. They say, oh, he harassed the Sandy Hook families. No, he didn't. He said, from what I understand from his mouth, is that he questioned the official narrative, said, I think this was a staged event. I think the government is staging this in order to put forward their ideas of gun control. The government wants gun control. And so they use these school shootings, and that's why every time there's a school shooting, the propaganda media, which is controlled by the government, starts talking about gun control immediately. That's always where they go every time there's a shooting. Oh, gun control, because they want to take the guns, because that's what authoritarian systems want. The reason authoritarianism isn't unleashed on us in full force is because you have 200 million weapons across this country. You have farmers and construction workers and ex-veterans that are armed and that would resist. And so authoritarianism wants to take that away so that there is no resistance. And so they use chaos. They use these events, whether they're staged or real. I personally believe that there have been a few staged ones, and when I say staged, allowed, like the one in Uvalde or whatever that just happened. Didn't the police stand down? Like, you have to ask yourself, why did that happen? Why? It's I think there's powers behind the scenes that want these things to take place so that they can keep pushing this agenda of gun control. I don't know anything about the Sandy Hook one, so whether or not that was staged or whatever, And that doesn't mean people didn't die. That doesn't mean children didn't die. It just means that there was a nefarious plot behind it, that it was orchestrated or allowed, or the door was open for it to happen. So that's not saying to the parents or the victims, or the survivors, that we're making light of that situation. People died, people lives were ruined. It's just saying, okay, why did that happen? Was it just a random shooter, or is there a plot behind it? And you're supposed to be able to be allowed to question that narrative. And that's what I heard Alex talk about. And then I think he had some guests on that said Sandy Hook was fake and brought forth their supposed evidence of it. But again, that's what journalism is. When I was a kid, my mom used to read the National Enquirer all the time, and it would talk about Bigfoots and Elvis Presley still being alive and a bat child and all this weirdness, But you're allowed to be weird. You're allowed to be kooky. You're allowed to be crazy. You are allowed to believe whatever you want to believe. That's what freedom is. And again, as an individual, then I'm allowed to listen to you, to hear you out, to weigh out the matter, to use discernment, to see if what you're saying sounds reasonable and logical, and if there's evidence, and if I can see a motive, and if it fits the worldview narrative that I hold to, which is for me is a biblical worldview, which is the Bible's the only absolute truth we have, so we test everything by the light of the scriptures. And then we judge whether or not we believe a thing. That's what freedom of information is. That's what we're supposed to have. So I think it's pretty messed up that a media company, InfoWars, Alex Jones's media company, can be sued for questioning a narrative. And again, they're going to say he harassed and he defamed. You can't defame an event, and he never harassed anybody. Yes, I get it. The parents of the children were upset that he was saying this was fake. That's not harassment. That's you. Unfortunately, and it is a delicate situation because you feel bad for these parents, but you don't have the right to be comfortable. You don't have the right to not be offended. That is not a constitutional right. You have the right to not listen to it. If somebody's saying something that you find offensive or that hurts your feelings or whatever, you do not have the right to censor them. That's taking away their rights. You have the right to walk away, to not listen to it anymore, to dismiss that person. Those are your rights. You don't have the right to silence somebody. Now, the reason this is a spiritual thing is because the biblical worldview is that this world is evil. This world is heading towards authoritarianism. And the target of this authoritarian system, the enemy of this authoritarian system, is biblical Christianity. That's where this is all leading. So whenever there's an infringement upon a freedom, it is eventually going to be used against Christianity. So when you see somebody censored and silenced, what that means is that they are preparing, they're getting ready to censor and silence biblical Christianity. When they say, hey, you can't say Sandy Hook was fake, or hey, you can't say Joe Biden's a clone, or hey, you can't say Michelle Obama's a man. And by the way, I don't know if I believe in it. I think there's pretty good evidence for Michelle Obama being a man, but that's a different story. Does it really matter in the big scheme of things? No. But lost my train of thought here. Oh, the point is that when they do that, what they're preparing society for is to say, hey, you can't say adultery is a sin. You can't say Jesus Christ is the only way. You can't say homosexuality is a sin. You're not allowed to say that the Bible is the Word of God. That is where this is heading. So anytime there's an attack on freedom, It is an attack on the biblical worldview. It's an attack on biblical Christianity, because that is the end game. That is the end result. They want to take away our freedoms. They want to take away our right to speak about Jesus. They want to, and I think maybe the founding fathers knew this, and knew that in order for and a lot of the founding fathers were not Christians, but I think they understood the necessity of a free society that can worship God any way they want, and can say anything they want, and can print anything they want. Like, you're supposed to have that freedom. Without that freedom, we're heading towards this new world order, this authoritarian system that's going to persecute and enslave Christianity. So that's why this is a big deal. It's not about, look, you can agree or disagree with Alex Jones. You can hate the fact that he said Sandy Hook is fake. You can despise that. You can feel bad for the victims' families, but you cannot censor his right to speech. He has the media. Journalism is supposed to have the right to question narratives, to say, like, the things that are brought, when you look into that, like, there is evidence that makes you question things. Now, again, I'm not, I believe that people died at Sandy Hook. I believe there was a shooting. Some of these school shootings, I believe that every one of them happened. But again, I question how or why they happened. And I've seen some pretty convincing evidence that shows that the government is using these events, manipulating these events to get gun control. And I think that's ultimately the point Alex Jones was trying to make as well. And so when he is censored and sued, that is a frightening thing, because that means that Christianity, we're one step closer to outright persecution of biblical Christianity. And so that's why this is a spiritual matter, and I think it's ridiculous for anybody to celebrate a loss of freedom. If you're a Christian, it should grieve you. It should concern you. It should not concern in the sense of worry, but it should alert you. It should make you aware that, hey, this is dangerous for Christians. This is heading towards a dangerous place for Christians. It ought not be celebrated. Again, I don't care how you feel about Alex Jones. You can dismiss him. You can disagree with him. You can be repulsed by him. You don't have to listen to, I had to stop listening to him because I was just getting furious. I would get so angry with the corruption in society that I had to go, whoa, man, my heart is getting violently angry towards this wickedness. I got to take a step back from this, but and so I stopped listening. That's all you have to do. I don't get to go censor. I don't get to say, hey, you're making me angry, so shut up. You're not allowed to speak anymore. That's ridiculous. But anyways, I'm just repeating myself ad nauseum here. But anytime I see an attack on freedom, it's very, very concerning, because it's leading towards persecution of Christianity. That's the end goal. And so every time I see authoritarianism taking a step of advancement, I see them coming towards us. And I see the sword coming. I see the beast coming. I see the monster coming. And again, it's nothing to worry about. We don't fear. What's the worst they can do? Kill us? Okay, to die is gain. We don't fear him who can kill, but him who can kill and afterwards can cast into hell. We fear the Lord. We serve the Lord. He's our sovereign God. He's, no weapon formed against us can prosper. Nothing can come against you unless God in his sovereignty has planned it and allowed it, and in which case it's for your good and his glorification. Even your death, even our persecution, imprisonment, torture, whatever, it's ultimately going to lead to the glorification of Jesus Christ and We get to go spend eternity with him, so we don't fear this stuff. But we are concerned. We are on guard and alert. It's we see the iceberg coming, so to speak. And every time that authoritarianism takes a step forward, I'm on high alert. And to see saints or anybody else celebrate that's very concerning. That means, whoa, you don't really realize what's going on here. You need to be aware. It doesn't matter how you feel about Alex Jones. You need to understand that this is about you. They're coming for you. Like, the end game is a silencing of us. And so, anyways, I wanted to get that off my chest, share my thoughts on that. Anybody who's listened to enough of these podcasts know that I'm a man of routine and schedule. Like, I have my life scheduled out, and it's important to me. And so, if you've heard me talk on this before, you can just skip this segment. But I wanted to discuss spiritually why this is important to me. I think it takes effort and diligence to walk in the Spirit. Like, walking in the Spirit is not just something you do as the occasion arises. When you have an opportunity to do righteousness and you choose righteousness, that's to me that's not walking in the Spirit. Walking in the Spirit is it's an entire it's not just one moment. It's the entirety of your day has to be focused on. Like, we have to live each moment spiritually focused. We have to continually be thinking on spiritual things. And for me, that can be difficult because my habitual pattern is to fall back on laziness and entertainment. Like, if I'm sitting around and I got nothing to do, I'm going to turn on the TV, and just lay on the couch. And then that in turn can lead to sin, sinful thoughts or sinful behaviors, because you're just sitting there with idle time. And really, idle time is a feeding of the flesh. It's like, I was thinking about like a scenario of you're on a river, and the river is flowing towards a great waterfall. And we all start our lives unaware of the waterfall, blinded to it, ignorant of it, and we're just going towards it. And we're either coasting along with life towards it, or we're paddling even faster towards it. And then Christ saves you, and he flips the canoe around, and now you're going against the stream. You're going towards safety, towards the safe landing ahead, or however you want to describe it. But I was thinking, like, so we do have security. Like, when you get turned around, it's like you have a tow cable attached to your canoe that assures that you are going to make it to the safe land. But at the same time, if you're not paddling against the current, you're going to be coasting along with the world towards this waterfall. And the grace of God prevents us from going down it. But in the meantime, we can be wrapped up in the midst of all the chaos, the rapids and the quickening current, and all the debauchery and the partying that's going along on this river, going towards the edge. The closer and closer we get to the land, the more and more we're separated from that. And so if we're not paddling constantly, we're coasting down the river. The river will take you towards the waterfall. Now, we have the assurance of the cable attached to us, but at the same time, we need to be striving against the current. And to do that is a consistent effort. It's consistently thinking about things of Christ and having your mind set on heavenly things. And for me, the only way to do that is for me to be regimented, for me to have a diligent schedule. And Proverbs 16:3 is really like my target verse for this. It says, "Commit your works to the Lord, and your thoughts will be established." So I thought I would just share with you my goal, my schedule goal to keep spiritually minded, to keep my works committed to the Lord, so that my thoughts are established. In the hopes that, maybe this can encourage you or give you some ideas of what you can do as well, to help stay your mind on spiritual things. And so I just wanted to real quick give you a rundown of what my schedule looks like throughout the week. And I very rarely, if ever, follow through on every step of this. And then my downfall is that once I fail in one point, I get discouraged and kind of just give up on the rest of the day. But that's really foolish. Like, wherever you fail, it's the analogy of the rowing. You stop rowing, you get distracted by the chaos going on around you, and you start floating downstream again. But at any moment, you can pick those oars up and start rowing again. So once you're aware, okay, I screwed up there, I stopped focusing, I stopped rowing, it does no good to just say, well, I've lost so much ground, I might as well just not row for a little bit. But to just pick up the oars and row again. And so my reinvigorated goal that I do this frequently. I'll fail, and then I'm discouraged. And then I'm like, I say, okay, it's time to restart then. Start fresh. Let's just go at it again. And that's what we got to do. We got to keep going. And so when I give you this list here, I am by no means saying that this is how I do it every day. This is my goal. This is the mark I have set for myself, and I hope to attain. But I fail often and frequently. But again, it's about just, okay, now let's go again. So just get back on track. So I work from home, I work at a computer. So this part is relatively easy for me. You might have to find some other way to do it. But on Monday morning, my goal is to get up an hour before I have to log into work, and to have a time of prayer, to immediately go into the prayer closet. And this is where I fail most frequently, because it's so much easier to just hit the snooze button. But the goal is to get up and to get into prayer right away. And then I start my work day, and I can turn on my radio and put on some sermons. I have a collection of sermons that I like to listen to. And then I can listen to those sermons as I work throughout the day. So that's really keeping my mind focused as I'm doing my work. I'm picking up on these tidbits of knowledge from various preachers and giving me spiritual thoughts as I go. So then when the work day is, and then during my first break, there's a time of scripture reading. Pick up the scriptures and read. And then during my lunch, I read a edifying book. Right now I'm working through the collection of Spurgeon sermons. And then at my second break, pick up the scriptures and read again. Read another chapter. So read a chapter at my first break, and then read a chapter at my second break. And then the work day's done. And on Mondays, my goal is to do a live Facebook video working through the scriptures. I'm doing like a verse by verse thing through the scriptures, just like a 5 to 10 minute commentary on that part of the scriptures that I'm in. Like right now, I'm in Colossians chapter 2. And then once I finish that, I head off to the gym. And the gym isn't really a spiritual activity, but it's an activity that is beneficial and takes up some time there where you don't have idle time to think about fleshly things. And then I get home from the gym, and I record my podcast, which usually takes an hour and a half to upload and all that. So by that point in time, I'm at the 9 o'clock, 9:30 hour, and it's time to get ready for bed. You get the coffee ready for the next morning, and relax and get ready to wind down and go to bed. So the full day is consumed there if done correctly. And then on Tuesdays, I switch it up so that I don't get bored with sermons, and instead I listen to Christian podcasts during the workday. And then at the end of the day, so I do my scripture readings first and second break, read the book during lunch, and then at the end of the day, I don't do a daily video, and instead I'll just go right to the gym. And then I come back, and the goal is to do a teaching video, which usually takes about half an hour, maybe an hour once I've uploaded it. And so then I'm probably at about 8 o'clock at night, and I have some relaxed time. Just kind of relax, chill out, and just, wind down. Wednesdays, back on the sermons in the morning. Got the scriptures during the workday, the sermons playing during the workday. Workday's done, head off to the gym, get the gym done, and then head over to church. Church has a 7 o'clock service. Or not service, but like a study group. Get that done. I'm back at the house about 8 o'clock. And then I can record another one of those verse-by-verse Facebook Live videos. So then by the time that's all done, again, I'm looking at about 9 o'clock when I'm all wrapped up and I got wind down time. So again, it's just, I've stayed busy the whole day, kept my mind on spiritual things throughout the day, and then there's really no time, no idle time to fall into the flesh. On Thursdays, again, back to the podcast, the Christian podcasts, and the scriptures throughout the day, the reading throughout the day, and then head off to the gym once the workday's done, and then come back and do a worldview video that I do on YouTube, which is my favorite thing to do. That usually takes about 2 hours once I'm done recording and uploading and all that. So again, I'm at about that 9 o'clock hour when I'm done, and it's time to wrap up and go to bed. Fridays, back on the sermons throughout the day, reading the scriptures during my breaks. After work's done, do the daily video, the verse by verse, and head off to the gym. And then one thing that I haven't been doing, but I want to add to it, is after the gym, come back and do a Christian reaction video that I used to do, where I watch some sort of Christian thing, like a Christian music video or a Christian evangelist video or something along those lines, and do commentary on it. And again, I'm probably at about the 9 o'clock hour when I'm done, so it's time to wind down and go to bed. Saturday, I'm up at about 6 o'clock in the morning, out of the house by about 6:45, and I make a 2.5-hour drive to the cities, so I can meet with my fellowship group. We do Bible study at 10 a.m. We pray for each other. We work our way through the scriptures. We're done by about 1 p.m., and then we go out to lunch, and then we're usually just hanging out, trying to find some sort of activities to keep us busy. But there's continual fellowship all day Saturday, until probably about 9-10 o'clock at night when I head back home. So then I'm home by about 1, and try to get into bed right away so I can get up for church, which is Sunday. Waking up around 9 o'clock, getting up, getting ready, going to church at 10:30. Church is done, and then I do an every other Sunday thing where on one Sunday I'll head out with the signs, the gospel signs and tracts after church, either to some sort of local event or just a street corner somewhere. Spend a good 2 hours, maybe 3 hours out there, get home about 3 o'clock. I do my meal prep for the week, get all my meals cooked, everything like that. Then go to the gym, and then it's probably about 7 o'clock, and then that's my relax time. I just kind of chill out. On the alternate weekends, instead of going out with the signs, I try to get together with my family so I can have some family time, and then repeat the process. But with that schedule, and again, the goal is to stay spiritually minded. If I follow through on that schedule, as you can see, there's not a lot of downtime for me to fall into the things of the flesh. And that's my hope and my purpose. And like I say, I fail frequently. I get lazy, and I decide to not do a video or not go to the gym, and instead just sit around the house and watch TV. And that's when I fall into sinful behavior. So for me, it's about staying regimented and sticking to that schedule. And if I do so, there's not a lot of time in there for me to fall into nonsense. So I just wanted to share that with you guys. I apologize if it was boring, but if it can encourage anybody else or give anybody else ideas on how to stay spiritually minded throughout the week, that'd be great. All right, so that's what I got for you guys this week. As always, I truly appreciate you listening. I love you, and Lord willing, we'll talk to you next time.